This week's episode is sponsored by Neon's film Presence, directed by Steven Soderbergh and written by David Koepp. Presence is a thrilling new ghost story about a family that moves into a new home only to discover that they are not alone. Starring Lucy Liu, Chris Sullivan, and Julia Fox, Presence has been hailed as one of the scariest movies you'll see this year. Now playing in theaters.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to tell you some terrifying tales from Reddit. Before we begin, I wanted to remind you to come out to Cryptid in Ontario, California next weekend, the 31st through the 2nd. The schedule is up on my Instagram, as well as the Bloody Disgusting Instagram and website. I'll be interviewing a lot of people, doing panels, and I'll also be hanging around the Bloody Disgusting booth if you'd like to come by and say hi. And I will be there all 3 days of the con as well, so if you miss me one day, I'll be around for the others. Okay, now, on to the dark Reddit. Let's begin with a rabbit hole of inexplicable glitches and time slips, starting with a strange occurrence at a Walgreens. This was posted in the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit on January 25th, 2024 by user AxelFlask777. This was titled, "Something Happened Today, and I Don't Know Who to Tell." I was running late for work this morning while my wife was tending to our 1-year-old who was sick with a cold. She asked if I could stop at the Walgreens down the street to get him some cough medicine. I was in a huge rush, but didn't want him to go without it, so I headed over there as quickly as I could. My wife and I were on the phone as I was driving and pulling into the parking lot. Street was busy and packed with cars, and as I was walking up to the store, I noticed a woman putting her screaming child into her car just outside the store. My wife was reminding me which medicine to buy as I checked my phone for the time, and that's when it got weird. The second I walked into the store, my phone turned off and the call dropped. The sliding door closed behind me and the entire store was empty. The lighting was different than what I was used to, fluorescent and cold. There was no one at the front and no one in any of the aisles that I could see. I turned around to look outside and there were no cars in the street. Not even the woman who was just there 5 seconds ago. I actually said hello twice, loudly, feeling like this was some sort of horror movie I was in. The entire store was silent, and I go to grab my phone again to film this in case no one believed me, and of course, it won't turn on. I turn the corner down a random aisle, and just like that, there's people there. The lighting is different now, and warmer. There was even music now. I turn to look at the front, and there is a customer mid-transaction with a checker. My phone starts working again, and my wife is calling me. She tells me it just went silent and said call failed. I stood there for a minute and realized there was nothing I could do but buy the medicine and go on with my day. I don't know if this was a glitch in the Matrix, odd and coincidental timing, or some weird parallel universe type stuff. But all I know is that it was strange as hell, and I didn't really know who to tell this to. So, before we discuss, let's dive into the comments, because this started a myriad of people who had very similar stories to this user, particularly this one. Human Cell 3158 said, OP, your story sounds eerily similar to mine. I'd like to tell it to point out the consistencies. This happened in 2016. I have an ex-boyfriend, and while we were together, we liked to just listen to music and drive around, discovering new places. We turned into this neighborhood one evening. It was early summer/late spring, around 5 or 6. Still a bit light outside and fairly warm. On these excursions, I'd usually be using my GPS on my phone. Once we turned into this neighborhood, things got very strange and unusual. What we first noticed is that there was no one outside. No one bringing in groceries from the car or coming home from work. No cars on the road driving, even on all the streets we looked down/drove down. No children out playing or riding bikes. We mentioned this to each other, and we began to look a bit harder. Next, we noticed that there is nobody in any of the homes. No lights on in any of the houses, as many of them had big front windows you could look into, but they were all furnished and had cars in the driveway, like people did live there. We begin to get very weirded out. I am trying to route us out of that neighborhood, but my GPS is completely not working, and was showing us driving down roads we weren't on, turns where there weren't supposed to be any, etc. It's like we were going in circles, even though we kept trying to go down different streets to find the main road. Nope, nothing but eerie, empty houses. I think now that we were stuck in some sort of strange loop. It was reminiscent of a fake neighborhood used to test nuclear missiles on. But this was in the middle of Fairfax, Virginia, where there surely would be no nuclear missile test neighborhoods. We both start to panic at this point. Like, where the hell are we, and why isn't the GPS working? I've always been very good with computers and phones, and majoring in IT now, and was no stranger to my Google Maps app. We finally found this one road that looked like it led out of the neighborhood. We took it, and it was different than the others. What we discovered next shook us to our bones. It was a dirt road, unlike the others. After driving down it for a moment, we realized it led into a heavily wooded area. It was nightfall at this point, and we had been trying to find our way out for at least 20 to 25 minutes. We have no music on, as I had paused it so I could concentrate more on the GPS. We're driving down this road and see a huge house to the right. One light was on inside, what appeared to be the upper level mid-room. You could see light through the window, and a black figure standing there. We are so spooked out at this point. The figure wasn't moving, like it was just watching. We are driving slow because we both just can't understand what's going on and are looking up into the window. What the fuck is that? Then, so quickly and out of nowhere, this white pickup truck begins tailing us fast, way too fast to just simply be driving behind someone on a dirt road, at least 50 miles per hour. I'm not shitting you when I say it chased us out of there. My ex is driving, hunched over the wheel while simultaneously looking out his rearview mirror at the truck. I have my back turned, looking out the back car window. You could cut the tension with a knife as we're both freaking out. What the hell is happening? Drive faster, it's not slowing down. I can't drive much faster on this road, it's shit. We were in a small car. Eventually, the road finally and somehow leads us out to the main highway. What the hell? We both breathe a sigh of relief and are just absolutely bewildered at what just happened. We were both sober, and on the ride back, we were both asking each other, that wasn't just me, right? To this day, both of us are freaked out and haunted by this event. We had some other very strange things happen to us after this as well. We were both sober every time we encountered something like this. But I'll digress for now. Thank you for reading if you've made it this far. I don't recount this publicly often because not many people believe us, but your story really resonated with me and reminded me of that time. So that was met with a comment from user Bambi Bonkers, who said, "Wow, whatever area you guys stumbled into, you were not supposed to be there. Did you guys still go into random neighborhoods like this?" So, Human Cell gave us some more. This is exactly how we felt and how we still feel. You took the words right out of my mouth. Whenever we talk about it nowadays, as we're no longer together but remained good friends, we both remark on how, wherever the hell we were definitely not supposed to be there. The adventuring slowed down a bit after that, admittedly. We never had another experience quite like that ever again. However, a few weeks later, we were sitting in the garage of my parents' townhouse that was on the market. It was empty, and it was just us sitting on a cooler and smoking a cigarette with the garage door maybe a third of the way open. Again, we were stone cold sober. I feel the need to point this out because after all these strange events took place, we both got caught up in heavy drug addiction. I swear to God, though, all of these strange occurrences happened before we had used drugs together. Anyway, this bright blue light started to shine on the side paneling outside the garage door. Everything then started shaking. It got really loud. We thought that we were either A, getting bombed, or B, a plane was crashing very close by. It was intense. We were sitting on the cooler, hugging each other while everything is shaking and vibrating, and the sound was like an airplane engine right above our head. We asked each other, "What the hell is that?" He actually said to me, "Are we going to die?" We told each other we loved each other just in case, and held on to each other tight. That's how real this felt. All of a sudden, everything just went quiet, silent, absolutely silent. I remember him saying, "Is it over?" It was nighttime when this happened. I get up and go under the garage door to outside to investigate. I don't see anything. I ran out into the street, and to my left in the sky, I saw this bright blue light zip across the horizon, out of sight in less than a mere second. Even he didn't see that part, as I was the one who got up first to go check things out outside. By the time he met me there, which was only a few seconds later, it was gone. This stuff is so insane to me. I feel like, how could any of this have happened? It sounds so unbelievable even to myself, and having experienced it. He is the only one I can talk to about this, and not feel crazy about it afterward. I'm so glad he experienced all this shit with me. I would think I was completely off my rocker if I had been alone. One more thing that might be relevant is in the couple of weeks leading up to these events, we had been seeing things in the sky. Now, we shared a townhouse in the neighboring county of Gainesville, Virginia, and we lived with one other person. This was before we were staying at my parents' townhouse. We would see this thing. It was 3 dots, orbs, lights, gyrating in a specific motion, but moving as one object. The way it was moving, they were not planes. We saw a lot of planes all the time, as there were many air bases in the area, and this was completely different. And this would only happen when it was just the two of us alone. Never when the third person would be present, and never when we brought our phones outside. We all smoked cigarettes, so periodically we would go out on the balcony to smoke really quickly, and we didn't feel the need to bring our phones with us, you know? But it never, ever happened when the third person came out to smoke with us. Again, we were both completely sober during all of these instances. I'm curious to know whether OP has maybe seen anything in the sky lately. 8 years later, and we're still trying to connect the dots. I wish I could understand what had happened to us, because after this, my life went downhill really quickly. I just wish I had some closure, and unfortunately, the only closure I'll probably receive is knowing that I didn't go through this alone, that I wasn't crazy or hallucinating, that this was a shared experience between two people. I'm sorry for the length of this comment. I don't talk about this often, but when I see things that sound similar, I want to give as much detail in hopes that maybe someone might have some answers. Cue a few others chiming in with their stories of high strangeness at a Walgreens. I told you, this was the rabbit hole. This is from user The Amor Fati. This reminded me of my weird Walgreens encounter earlier this year. My husband pulled up to the store, and I was just going to run in. As I was getting out of the car, a man was heading into the store. I got out, my husband went to park, and I approached the doors and noticed the inside looked dark. I pulled on the doors, and they were locked. I was so confused. I actually knocked on the door several times. I got the weirdest feeling. So I ran back to the car and told my husband that I thought the place may be getting robbed. We sat there discussing if we should call the police. Then my husband said, "Someone just walked out." I looked over and sure enough, it's the guy that I saw walk in. I got out and walked over to the doors. The lights were on and the doors open. I walked in and there were people and a cashier. I am sure I looked bizarre because I said out loud, "Is everything okay? Your doors were locked a minute ago and it was dark in here?" The cashier and person standing there gave me the "okay, crazy" look and didn't answer me. My husband didn't say anything mean, but blew it off as me misinterpreting the situation. It still bothers me to think about. And this comment by Independent.63. This is so bizarre. Similar thing happened to me a long time ago, but I never go to Walgreens without thinking about it. It was around 10 p.m. and I was going out after work, so I stopped at a Walgreens on my way to buy false eyelashes and glue, LOL, mid-aughts. Parking lot for this one was tiny, but almost full, and I remember feeling irritated to have to park way down to the back alongside the building, and one car was blasting music. Same thing basically, I walked in, and it was eerily empty and silent inside. I couldn't even hear the car blasting music outside, but I thought, 10 p.m. is late at night, so maybe it's just an empty store. I also kind of decided to take advantage of the bright lights and no one around, and opened a pack of lashes to glue them on, looking into a tiny mirror they have. This part is where it got kind of weird. As I closed my eyes to pinch the lashes, I suddenly heard, like, normal ambient background noise of people and music and whatever randomly beeps at Walgreens. I still remember this weird feeling with my eyes being closed, as though I was deaf and suddenly I could hear again. It was such an unsettling moment. My eyes even filled with tears, but I thought it's from the eyelash glue. I don't know what happened, but I just chalked it up to me spacing out. But it never quite made sense because the only reason I started gluing the lashes before even paying for them was due to the privacy I felt I had. So before I interject with my own thoughts on all these, one other commenter came in with a sort of theory about the whole thing, and this was from Zimrose. This is a very common glitch. At least I've read so many accounts on here describing the exact same thing. You're in a busy location, and then all of a sudden, all of the sound and people are gone. The lighting and sound and feeling are weird. The setting itself is the same, but it's like an abandoned set. Later, if someone was looking for that person in the same place at the same time, they weren't visible to the others inhabiting the regular world, and then turn a corner, and it all snaps back. It seems to be a parallel world very nearby, like the Upside Down, but not as horrifying, fortunately. Almost like you're blipping into a frequency where it's like a film that can capture things that are solid and standing still, but all life and movement are not perceived. I wish there was a tag we could put on these posts so you could easily gather and group together all the similar glitches to see how many there were, because there really are a lot. The closest technical term I can think of is the Oz factor, but I think that's usually used when it happens in the woods, where all animals and sound go missing and there's no wind and just a heavy feeling like you're in the wrong place. Maybe that's the same phenomenon, I don't know. Anyway, at least you're not alone in your experience of suddenly being alone. So, this is Shelby, by the way. those were a lot. It was a lot in one post. There were actually more, but I kind of picked and chose some of the stranger ones and more relevant ones. And, you know, I've mentioned on the show a million times, I had a time slip kind of thing happen that was very similar to this, where all the sound went away. But it was more like the Oz effect because I was in the woods and all of the sound went away, and it was a strange feeling. And so I have firsthand experienced this. I don't know what it is. I know skeptics out there will, you know, be like, oh, it's, I don't know. I don't know what you would call it, but I have experienced it. I don't know what it is. It's weird to feel. You know, I will say though, Walgreens and like all types of drugstores, CVS, whatever you have in your area, they are really creepy. There's like a lot of times there are no windows, or, you know, mostly no windows, maybe just the front sliding doors, because a lot of times the windows they do have are wrapped with the logo of the store. And it was strange to me in the first story that they said that the lighting felt more cold and fluorescent than warm, like usual, because to me, most of those stores are pretty cold and fluorescent. You know, now, since COVID, a lot of them aren't open 24 hours anymore. Some of them are, and I think some of them are coming back. But in the old days where like so many of them were open 24 hours, Walmart was open 24 hours in a lot of places. They did have a really creepy air to them. So I've experienced sort of what the user who went in for false lashes, I've definitely done those like late night runs, and that does feel weird, but they did mention that, you know, there was no sound, and that beeping sound that all of those stores have, I think it's just the check stand is making that sound. But I don't know, it's strange. It's strange. Some other users that I didn't read, they likened it to, it's almost like in a video game where you load in to a world, but the NPCs haven't loaded yet. And some other people who seem to believe in simulation theory, and if you do as well, that would make sense in a simulation theory setting. I don't think I believe in simulation theory. I really don't. But it is an interesting concept. And I know a lot of people who fully do. And no judgment from me. Nobody knows the answer to anything that's going on, really. So, yeah, could be. I don't have any answers. I just found that really fascinating that, like, that last person who had the theory about it said that this is a pretty common thing. It could even be something to do with our brains. It could be something where, you know, our brains process things maybe a little slower at one moment because of something that happens that we can't quite figure out yet. And someone actually did in the comments mention to get tested for epilepsy. So, yeah, maybe a brain thing. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to get into that, so because I have no idea. But I would love to hear your thoughts, and if you've ever had stories like this, because it seems pretty common. It seems like a lot of people have had these strange moments like this. So now let's switch gears to another form of high strangeness that I adore: doppelgangers. This was posted by user Perplexing Camel in the Paranormal Encounters subreddit on August 16th, 2023. They titled it Shower Prank. I am a strong believer that if you acknowledge something, it gets stronger. This happened to me months ago, and I just want to put it out into the world in hopes that it takes away the temptation to bring this up to my fiancé all the time. One evening after work, I went to take a shower. I will admit that I had not slept the night before, so I was incredibly tired. I had my music as loud as it would go on my phone, so I could hear it over the rushing water. About midway through, my music volume lowered to silent. I turned around to open the curtain and find out why, when my fiancé pulled back the curtain a little bit, stuck his head in the shower, and grinned at me. I looked at him with confusion, and he popped his head back out before turning the light off and closing the bathroom door. To say I was furious is an understatement. I really don't like certain kinds of pranks. Call me lame if you want. and one involving wet and slippery darkness just hit me hard with how tired I was. I immediately stepped out of the shower, flipped the light back on. The switch was right between the shower and the door. There's only about a foot between the two as they share a wall, and stormed out of the bathroom without even getting a towel. I found my fiancé sitting at his computer with his headset on and absolutely laid into him. He had this confused and panicked expression as I asked why he would think that was funny, telling him to never do that again. He asked me to explain what he did wrong, which made me angrier. But when he said he had been playing since before I even went to shower, I believed him. To begin with, he hates pranks even more than I do. We've been together for 6 years, and he's never so much as jumped out from a corner to startle me. And I've never seen him mess with anyone else. He is not the type of person that would even think to do something like that. But I was so tired that none of that sank in before I lost it on him. Along with simply not being the type, the setup of the argument would have made it impossible for him to get back to the office without me hearing him. Between the bathroom and the office, there is a noisy metal baby gate. The living room, the kitchen, another noisy metal baby gate in the office doorway. I would have also heard his footsteps on the wooden floors if he were moving as quickly as he would have needed to. I've thought about it over and over. It's the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me. And I want to write it off as me being sleep deprived, but I had to turn my music back up. I had to flip the light switch back on. I had to open the bathroom door to get out. We leave it open when we shower because it's just the two of us, and the bathroom has poor ventilation for steam. I made him check the apartment for anyone else, even though I know what he looks like. And the face was him. I asked him to stay in the bathroom with me until I washed the conditioner out of my hair. I think about this every time I shower now. We've had some random things happen before that. Stuff moving to places we didn't know we put it. Sounds we could rationalize forever. The motion sensor triggering on the cameras over nothing. But nothing nowhere near the level before then. I don't know what I'm looking for here, other than a moment to wring out my brain. But if anyone has a similar experience, this misery would welcome some company. And of course, as so often happens, this brought out people telling their own stories of mimics in the comments. This one in particular freaked me out a bit. This was from user Oh My God Ew, which is such a good username. I felt like this would be the proper place to share my childhood experience with something similar. In my childhood home, it was normal for my mom to wake me up to come watch the weather forecast with her in the morning. She'd often just call my name from her room, and I'd come in on my own. However, one morning, she actually walked into my bedroom instead, wrapped in her blanket. Instead of asking me to watch the weather, she said, "It's time for your lesson," and started walking towards the opposite end of the house instead of back to her room, where we'd usually go. I sleepily followed her. I watched her form, wrapped in the blanket, move towards the couch and sit down on it. I sat down next to her and said, "So, what lesson? What is it?" And before the last words left my mouth, I realized my mom was not in the room with me at all. It was just the blanket. I sprinted to her room and woke her up, and we did watch the weather after that. I was able to chalk it up to just being me sleepwalking while half conscious, but to this day, I have no idea how the blanket was in the same position on the couch when I'd watched my mom walk to the couch wrapped in the blanket in the first place. Literally unexplainable. That is all, LOL. And here's one from a deleted user. I've actually had something like this happen before. One time, about a year or so ago, I was visiting my hometown with my fiancé. We stayed out there later than anticipated and ended up staying the night in a hotel out there. My hometown is like 4 hours away from my current residence. Anyway, we were asleep in the hotel, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night to a really weird feeling. I look over at the clock, and it was 3:30 in the morning. And when I rubbed my eyes and kind of looked around the room, I saw my fiancé standing at the foot of the bed with his back to me. I kind of sat up and almost reached out to touch him, but I pulled back because something just didn't really feel right. As I pulled back and went to roll over, my other arm brushed up against something, and when I looked over, my fiancé was laying in bed asleep next to me. I put my hand on his shoulder and blinked a few times to make sure it was real, and when I looked back up at the foot of the bed, no one was there anymore. And here's one from Sweaty Juggernaut 37. Hello, you said you wanted someone to share a similar story, so I will be your company. When I was younger, I was at my mom's and her boyfriend's house for the summer. I had my own room, and they slept in their room. This night, however, my mom slept in the room with me, and her boyfriend was in their room. I was just laying down, but I wasn't sleeping. I was in the corner to the wall on the bed and saw him come into the room, but I didn't watch him walk towards the bed since I was in the corner to the wall. I just turned my head to face the wall and pretended to be asleep because it would have been kind of awkward. But I heard and felt the bed creak, and I also felt him beside me. He came in between me and my mom, and I'm getting uncomfortable. I wasn't uncomfortable with him, but the bed was not big enough for the three of us, and I was trying to ignore it, but I eventually said, you know what, I'm going to tell my mom to get him to get out. And I turned around, and he was not there. I don't know when he left, so the whole time I was just away in the corner, uncomfortable, and no one was in between me and my mom, or, beside me. Basically, he did not come into the room that night, and I think we all knew that it was a ghost or a mimic or whatever people call them. I was up the whole time. Why did I not hear or see him get off the bed and walk through the door? Plus, he had no reason to get in bed with my mom and I. My mom was disgusted at the thing for coming in bed with her and her daughter. Anyways, when I was older, my mom told me that there was a lot of paranormal activity there, and she felt it especially towards her. They ended up moving out for that reason. That first and second one got me really hard for this little series from this post. I mean, the idea of your fiance, pulling back the curtain, smiling at you, I assume, with a creepy smile, and then your music going off, the light going off, the door shutting. That's so much. I would be afraid to shower forever after that. I once heard on one of the ghost shows on Travel Channel or something, someone had a story about how they were showering and they peeked out of the shower, they were going to get out of the shower, and there was the ghost of an old woman standing in the doorway. And I've always found that one of the scariest images. This was, I think I was a kid when I saw this one, because I remember being a kid and it scared me not from showering. I still had to shower, but still it scared me being in the bathroom and thinking but what if there was a ghost in the doorway? What would I do? I couldn't run through it, I don't know what I would do. I'd be paralyzed by fear. And it's always been a weird little fear of mine is being in the shower and having a ghost appear in the doorway. It's very specific, I know. But that one, and then the ghost on the couch, that one reminded me of that scene from, I think, Paranormal Activity 3 is when there's the scene with the sheet, the kid, you see one of the girls sneak downstairs with a sheet over their head, and the babysitter turns and the sheet just falls because it's not actually one of the little girls, it's the ghost. And that reminded me of that scene, which was very good, very spooky scene. Sorry if I spoiled it, if you haven't seen Paranormal Activity 3 by now. But, just doppelgangers really freak me out. I have friends who've had experiences that are like this. And same with that first set of stories. I just love this, I don't know what else to call it other than this high strangeness. These strange things that happen to so many people. So many people have these stories, and they're so inexplicable. What is this? Our world is so mysterious, and that's what I love about it. Okay, and now I'm going to shift gears even harder. I don't think that's how you would say that. But I don't do a lot of cryptids on my show. It's just not it's not my favorite interest. Nothing against cryptids. Just something that I don't think about as often as some of this other stuff. But I came across this post in Paranormal Encounters by Silver Honkler, and I just couldn't not share it because this is kind of delightful, kind of terrifying. And, think of cryptids in your mind. I doubt this particular one was the first one to come to your mind. Here is, I don't even know how to say this, but I think I saw a gnome in a national forest yesterday. I will be the first to admit I thought these types of cryptids were a joke and not real, and I've never been able to take them seriously. I am an outdoorsman and have been for 35 years. I grew up in the woods. I memorized trees for mushroom hunting for a living. I know every brook, stream, bush, berry grove, log, you name it. I'm on a forest road, and I'm on hour 9 of not a soul in sight. I gather some mushrooms and look up the road and see a rock has fallen from the loose, steep side of the mountain to the middle of the road. I make a mental note that I have to move it and not drive over it. I gather my mushrooms and I get back to the car. I look up and I see what appears to be a 2 or 2.5 foot tall little brown thing walking from the side of the road over to the rock. My first logical thought is that it is a squirrel, but I see it as walking on 2 legs, appears to be wearing brown cloth or fur clothes, and is shaped like a human, but very tiny. It's not scurrying either. It is ambling on 2 legs like a human would, just casually walking like this is some normal, regular-ass thing, like monotonous work it does for a living. I don't believe my eyes. It has to be something else. I get back in my car and head up the road to see that the rock has been pushed back to the side of the road from whence it came. It had fallen off the hill, rolled to my left, then was sitting on the other side of the road on the right. There are drag marks like someone slid it back. I look, I smell, I sense, I listen. Nothing. I don't know where gnomes live, but the old partially logged section where I was at looked perfect for a clan of these things. Lots of places to hide, secluded, near water, plenty of routes to escape, and would be easy to dig little holes in the mountain and be fortified against invaders. The side of the road into it was flooded, and appears to do so regularly, so these little guys even have their own moat. I'm positive I'm overthinking this. It was a long drive back up the mountain, then down the mountain the other way, and sometime home, and I can't pick this apart into anything else but being a tiny little forest man. I'm like 1,000% positive that I saw what I saw. It was near a military special interest zone, allegedly blocked off due to some native butterflies, but I'm starting to wonder if this research area is really about butterflies after all. They send you to prison, ban you from parks, and give you a $5,000 fine if you take a single berry from inside that boundary. Someone pointed out that these creatures, the sightings of these creatures go back, for thousands of years, and that they believe this was probably a correct sighting, and asked the OP what the creature, if they could see facial features. And OP said, "It was far enough that I couldn't see his cute little tiny face. I also only saw him from the side, though I could make out long white hair with a little silver left in it that went down to its butt, and a curly, semi-manicured, curly gray beard that went down just about as far. He was wearing a hat that looked like the ones you wear in Canada or the Midwest during winter, the kind with ear flaps, but this had a short brim that was up like a ball cap and only went out about as far as his face." It's interesting reading through the comments too, because so many people, types of cultures have different words and terms for these small creatures. Maybe is it rude to call them creatures? I'm not sure. But there's, puckwudgies, there's duendes. You may have heard either of those terms. And a lot of people, cited that a lot of Native American and Native Canadian tribes have stories of these little people. One commenter called Terrible Twini 2, some of these usernames are hard to pronounce out loud, said, in Alaska, in the Native community, we call them little people. Never follow them and never interact. They have their own world and we respect them. I found out in this post more people outside of my regional area also know of the little people. Consider yourself lucky for your interaction, but leave it at that. Keep an eye out in the weeks to come for anything nefarious. If you don't already have security cams outside your house, do so to see if they follow you home. Another commenter, Jim the Old, said, my Swedish grandmother called them tomte. She warned me never to mess with them, as they can really screw up your life if they don't like you. We always left food out for them, but they ignored it. Another user, Emergency Ad 8321, said, dude, glad I'm not alone. Same. Camping in Ojai about 20 years ago. Early morning, heard rustling outside the tent. I thought I was sneaky and tried to unzip the opening to my tent so fast to jump out and see what it was. Unfortunately, I only unzipped the inner tarp one and not the exterior net mesh one. When I tried to leap out, I got retained by the unzipped net. But as my face mashed against the mesh, I got a glimpse of what I could only describe as what people say gnomes are. The little hat and everything. It stood up, picked up my dog's water bowl, and ran off with it. When I finally clumsily unzipped the mesh opening of my tent, 2 to 3 seconds, and jumped out to take a better look, gone. I wasn't in thick brush. There were plenty of trees and some sparse shrubbery, but nothing could have disappeared like that, particularly carrying a big, shiny metal water bowl. Had it been an animal, I definitely would have seen it. And my dogs absolutely loved chasing birds, rabbits, squirrels, raccoons, and many sort of creatures. That was their jam. My dogs didn't even bark or whimper to get out. They only looked at me later like, where the fuck is our water bowl, asshole? Anyway, that's my story. This particular post has a lot of stories from different people. I'm going to link all of the stories, all the posts I've shared in the show notes, so you can go read them through for yourself. But the one thing I will say that's pretty common among all these comments, I think I mentioned earlier, is not to mess with them. If you see one of these things, it is either very bad or at least not great, and at best neutral. I have not come across a single comment that's like, well, some people are like, oh, you're blessed, and that means you are more psychic than others. There are a few of those. But everybody who seems to have more of a cultural understanding of them, no matter the culture, different cultures, are like, don't mess with them. And also, check your pockets. So that's interesting. I wonder if they're considered like a fae, like, they have in Europe. I'm not sure. Again, cryptids aren't my specialty. But anyone who's into cryptids and knows more about things like this, I'd love to hear about it. Or if you've ever come across something like this. The fae interest me. There's just so many stories, but they scare me because just like these little guys, it seems like no one has like a good story about the fae. No offense, fae. If you're hearing me, I don't know how it works. Can't ever be too careful, right? Well, I'm going to leave us tonight on gnomes. So tonight was a little bit strange, which is how I love my dark Reddits. Doppelgangers, time slips, gnomes. This was a real fun one. Thank you for being here with me tonight. And if you'd like to follow the show on social media, you can follow it at scareyoutosleep on all the social media. You can follow me personally at Shelby B. Novak on all the social media. If you'd like more of me, you can check me out on the Bloody Disgusting podcast. Our recent episode, we had Dads from the Crypt on, a different podcast, and we actually told some ghost stories. I told about a haunting in one of my old apartments, and one of the guys from Dads from the Crypt talked about his too. So some interesting actual ghost stories that came up on that show. If you want to check that out, it's the most recent episode. It's called something like Doing Hot Yoga in Leather Pants. I think that's what the title is. And of course, if you'd like your own story featured on the show, whether it be fact or fiction, you can send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. Just make sure to put in that subject line whether it's a true story or a fictional one. You can also get ad-free episodes and bonus episodes on Patreon, patreon.com/scareyoutosleep. And if I really hope to see some of you this weekend at Creep by Econ. Please come out. If you see me, feel free to say hi. And if I'm not on my way to a panel, which I have a pretty packed schedule next weekend, so oh boy, I'm looking forward to it immensely. I'm just really busy. I'm working on a few other projects right now as well that are going to be exciting, but I have some deadlines. I was talking recently, just the other night, I popped into the Patreon chat. What is it called? It's called like the lounge or something. But I talked to all the patrons. I popped in just to chat and procrastinate and talk a little bit about I'm working on a new project. It's a collaborative project, and I have a deadline that interacts with the convention. So life has been very busy. I have been working a lot. I'm pretty tired. It's not digging ditches. I love this job so much. I'm not complaining, but it has been, it's all brain power. It's all, creating worlds from nothing is something. And I have another deadline for something else I'm working on. So I'm not sure about next week's episode. There will be an episode. It might be a fan favorite just because of my lack of time, to be honest. So we'll see. I'm hoping to get something original out. But honestly, the fan favorites, you seem to like them overall, and discover some stories that you either missed before or just never got to because you're a newer listener to the show. So I might throw one of those together. They don't seem to do very poorly anyway, and it would help me a lot. And yes, there are newer fires here and some wind, but we're supposed to be getting rain this weekend, so please send all of Los Angeles good rain vibes, please. Please, we need it. The air quality is so bad here, and it's just really stressful not knowing whether you're going to have to evacuate or not constantly. And so that's been looming on top of all my deadlines. It's, life, it's fine. I'm good. I went and saw The Brutalist last night, and it was fantastic, and I saw a few celebrities. So that was kind of cool. It's very LA night. Took the subway. I put a couple pictures on my Instagram. Took the subway, went to the Vista, which is owned by Quentin Tarantino. Saw some celebrities there. It was a packed house, I guess because The Brutalist just got nominated for, some Oscars. And it was a 70 millimeter showing. So if you can ever catch a 70 millimeter showing of anything, I recommend seeing it. The difference is astounding. It's astounding. I really recommend, if you're any of your theaters do ever a 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter, like a good showing, not digital showing of something, I highly recommend it. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful to look at. And The Brutalist was really great. The runtime, don't let it scare you. It's a very good movie. It's straight up drama, though, if that's not your thing. But, so yeah. So I'm going to go. Thank you so much for being with me here tonight. I think I already said that. Baking corner. Oh, I made some cookies this week, and I had to trash them. I don't do that lightly. You know that. I hate food waste. Totally messed them up. So let's not even talk about them. You know what? What cookies, right? Who made what? No one made anything this week. That's crazy. Why would you even say that I made cookies this week? Because that didn't happen. We all make mistakes. So I'm going to go. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Again, come out from the 31st to the 2nd, Ontario. Come see me. Come watch me do some panels. Chat with me when I'm free at the booth. See some of your other Bloody FM people. Some Michael Rothman from Halloweenies. Boo Crew's going to be there. John from Creepy. Pacific from SCP Archives. We're all going to be there. So come on down. And remember to drink your water. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.